The New York State Supreme Court was electric with tension on Friday, June 6, 2025. This wasn't just about Sean Diddy Combs' future. It was a mother's worst nightmare playing out in real time. All eyes locked on Janice Combs in the front row, her face tight with worry, her heart quietly breaking under the weight of her son's crumbling empire. She had watched him soar to unimaginable heights. But today, she saw him standing on the edge of the abyss. And she was teetering there too. Her pain was unbearable, a mother's deepest anguish. Watching the child she once trusted now facing complete ruin. Across the courtroom, Diddy sat frozen. The usual bravado was gone, replaced by a chilling stillness that screamed inner chaos. Janice stared at him, her heart desperate to catch just one flicker of hope in his eyes. Then, Judge Eris Thorne entered the room. Silence choked the air, tightening around Janice's chest. The judge's cold voice sliced through the tension. The verdict was coming. But first, an excruciating pause. Janice's vision blurred with terror. Her strength waned as her last hope slipped away. Her pounding heart echoed through her mind. Fate was closing in. Then came the crushing words. The court finds the defendant, Sean John Combs, guilty on all counts of racketeering, sex trafficking, and sexual assault. A gasp ripped through the courtroom. Before anyone could react, a raw, gut-wrenching cry shattered the stillness. It was Janice. All eyes snapped toward her, her pupils blown wide, her gaze empty, absorbing a reality too brutal to face. Her body stiffened, then collapsed onto the cold floor. Her eyes rolled back, a soft, broken whimper escaping her lips. "Medic!" a court officer shouted, breaking the stunned silence. Chaos erupted. Diddy strained against his legal team, his face twisted with disbelief and agony. His eyes locked on his mother's lifeless body sprawled across the tiles. This pain cut deeper than any guilty verdict. The judgment was final. But for Sean Combs, the real nightmare was only beginning, and Janice Combs was the most heart-wrenching witness to its devastating start. The road to this collapse had been long, paved with dazzling highs and haunting whispers. To truly understand the horror of this fall, you need to go back, way back, into the heart of Sean Combs' meteoric rise. A journey Janice watched with pride and hope, never dreaming it would end like this. She'd seen her son's unstoppable will and raw talent crush every barrier. From nothing, he built a music empire, the ultimate American dream, made real. In the early 2000s, Diddy, then known as P. Diddy, stood at the peak of fame and power. His legendary white parties in the Hamptons and Miami weren't just parties, they were myths. A playground of the rich, powerful, and dangerous. Janice couldn't possibly know everything that happened behind those closed doors, but she clung to the image her son presented. A brilliant man who worked harder than anyone. She brushed aside the tiny doubts, fiercely protecting that glowing vision of him. It was her greatest comfort, her deepest pride, but one night would leave a stain no one could ignore. On August 15, 2002, at Diddy's Star Island mansion in Miami, an infamous party unfolded. Stars glittered, power players mingled. Among them was rising actress Serafina Vance, radiant, naive, still learning the dark side of fame. Diddy's sharp eye landed on her fast. He saw not just beauty, but opportunity, fresh prey. He slid up to her by the pool, his voice smooth, full of promises about a life she'd only dreamed of. He handed her a special cocktail, exotic, fruity, and laced with a hidden danger. Later, as the night wound down, Diddy invited Serafina and a few other young stars to a private gathering in a secret wing of the mansion, far from watchful eyes. The mood shifted from fun to something far more sinister and terrifying. But that wasn't the only tragedy. Elias Echo Hayes, a gifted young music producer, idolized Diddy. He saw him as a god of sound. On July 23, 2007, Echo arrived at Diddy's massive New York studio, ready for a life-changing moment. But what he found was a world ruled by ruthless exploitation. Janice was often nearby, a quiet figure on the edge of her son's chaotic world. Maybe she noticed things. The hushes, the nervous glances, the shadows lurking in the studio. Diddy pressured Echo into depraved acts, handed him a special drink, crafted just for him. It blurred his mind, stripped away his will. Over the next weeks, Echo spiraled, trapped in a web he couldn't escape. Deep down, Janice's instincts must have whispered that something was wrong, but she couldn't face it. The rumors kept growing louder, louder, until the dam finally burst. For years, Janice had fought to protect her son's image, to believe in the good man she thought she knew. But in November 2023, everything changed. The first major civil lawsuit hit, a lightning bolt through her fragile peace. Cassandra "Cassie" Ventura, a talented singer and actress, bravely stepped forward. Her lawsuit, filed on November 16, 2023, laid out horrifying allegations: sexual assault, physical violence, sex trafficking. The headline screamed, "Cassie sues Diddy." Janice's mind raced back to the early 2000s. She remembered Cassie, so full of life, but sometimes strangely subdued. The flinches, the forced smiles. No, it's just a mother's overthinking, she'd told herself back then. Diddy was demanding, but not that. She couldn't believe it. Not her son. But Cassie's courage sparked a wildfire of truth. More voices rose up, a tide of survivors who had suffered in silence for too long. Janice watched the news with a heart like stone. She wanted to believe it was all lies, a plot to destroy her son. But the flood of accusations couldn't be stopped. They washed away every last shred of denial. On February 27, 2024, another bombshell dropped. A federal lawsuit filed by Rodney "Lil Rod" Jones, Diddy's former producer, exploded onto the scene, causing a public firestorm. His gut-wrenching testimony exposed widespread sexual misconduct, rampant drug use, and an alleged pattern of forced sexual acts. This time, the chilling details gripped the nation as Lil Rod dominated the headlines. As the news unfolded, Janice Combs couldn't shake the memories. She pictured the studio's constant buzz. She remembered Lil Rod, a young man, eager and dedicated, always grinding, always there. Late nights, people coming and going, the thick haze of marijuana that filled the air, something she'd once dismissed as just the music biz. Now, it carried a much darker meaning. Things escalated fast. On March 25, 2024, in a shocking twist, federal agents from Homeland Security Investigations stormed Diddy's lavish LA and Miami properties. A clear sign. The walls were closing in. Janice watched helplessly as the live footage played on every major news channel. Her son's empire, her life's foundation, crumbling on live TV. Nothing would ever be the same. Then came the trial. It kicked off on May 15, 2025, a day Janice would never forget. Each courtroom session was pure agony. She sat there every single day, watching pieces of damning evidence stack higher and higher. Every word chipped away at her last thread of hope. The courthouse was transformed into a fortress, swarming with security as the entire world tuned in. Assistant District Attorney Evelyn Reed came out swinging. Her opening statement that day was brutal. She painted a clear, terrifying picture of Diddy's alleged crimes. As she spoke, Janice felt every word stab through her soul. The phrases, exploitation, control, silence, echoed in her mind, forcing her to relive fleeting, buried moments. She remembered a young artist looking pale and shaken after a late-night session. An argument she'd overheard but ignored. The way Diddy's grip on those around him seemed tighter than anyone dared to admit. She'd always told herself it was just business. But now, the truth was clawing its way to the surface. Then came a moment that shook the room. On May 20th, 2025, Serafina Vance took the stand. Once a radiant young star, now hardened by experience. Her trembling voice sliced through the tense courtroom as she described that Miami party. "It was about control," she said. Janice flinched. She remembered Diddy's obsession with control, even in family matters. He had to know where everyone was at all times. If anyone questioned him, his mood would swing in an instant. She used to think that was strength, leadership, but now, a new, terrifying thought gripped her. What if that same control extended to every part of people's lives? She squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to block out the image of her son as a predator. But the shadows were relentless. They would not go away. And then, June 6, 2025, Judgment Day. The courtroom was suffocating in silence. Every second dragged like an eternity for Janice Combs. At 9:45 a.m., all eyes locked on Judge Eris Thorne. His expression was unreadable. "The jury has reached a verdict on all counts," he announced. "On the count of racketeering?" The words rang out, "Guilty." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Diddy's jaw tightened. "On the count of sex trafficking, guilty." A louder gasp erupted. Janice visibly flinched, her body trembling. "On the count of sexual assault, guilty." The word guilty hung in the air, a crushing blow. Diddy's entire world shattered in that instant. The gallery erupted, cheers, sobs, gasps. But then, A piercing cry rose above the chaos. "No, my son, no!" All heads whipped toward Janice Combs, her eyes wide and glassy, seeing everything and nothing all at once, her face contorted with raw grief. Hands clutching her chest, she collapsed to the floor with a sickening thud. Pandemonium broke out. Diddy let out a guttural scream, "Mother!" as he lunged forward, arms outstretched. But two federal marshals were ready. They grabbed him, holding him back. Medical teams rushed in, shielding Janice with a privacy screen. Judge Thorne banged his gavel. "Order! The courtroom will be cleared. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. for sentencing." As the room emptied, Diddy remained locked in place, his eyes glued to the white screen hiding his mother. His empire was gone. His years of unchecked power had come crashing down in the most brutal way imaginable. But this wasn't just the fall of a music mogul. This was a seismic event, a chilling wake-up call. For too long, fame had shielded the powerful from justice. Now, accountability had caught up. The echoes of these crimes will reverberate for years to come. And through it all, Janice Combs's immeasurable pain will remain a haunting reminder of a mother's impossible burden, watching her child's empire burn before her very eyes. Justice was served, but at what cost? The echoes of this downfall will never fade. Stay tuned for more shocking stories.